The quote is often attributed to Mother Teresa, whether it's apocryphal that she said it or not, I don't know. But the quote goes, "No one will act for the many, but people will act for the one." And it's the same sort of idea of 1 million deaths is a statistic, 1 death is a tragedy. And so helping 1 million people or 1 billion people or whatever, like that doesn't, it doesn't anchor me emotionally. But the idea of, so I used to big brother for this kid. And this started when I was 18. I was just doing it for extra credit in college, long story why, but I felt a desperate need to get good grades. And they offered extra credit to go basically mentor in the inner cities, because I went to USC, which is in the ghetto. And once you go 10 feet off of campus, you're in one of the worst neighborhoods in America, and certainly in Southern California. And so they put me in one of the worst schools and one of the worst school districts to help one of the worst problematic kids. And this kid's he's just freaking out. And I don't know what to do. I'm 18. And he's fucking going haywire, going crazy. And they tell you at week 6, you're supposed to tell them, hey, I'm only coming for 2 more weeks. This is an 8-week program. So I say, hey, I'm only coming for 2 more weeks. And when I say an already problematic child went nuclear, it was crazy. I've never seen a human meltdown like that. He walks up, so tiny, he was on Ritalin or something, so it was stunting his growth, it's very small. And he walks up to this kid that's like twice his size, socks him in the stomach. So imagine, we're sitting at a table, he just gets up, runs off, punches this big kid in the gut, kid goes down. I'm like, what is happening? Whoa. And so I'm like calming him down, I get him to sit back down, and I'm like, is this because I said I was only coming for 2 more weeks? And he finally calms down enough and he says, yes. I say, all right, listen. The way he was doing things is he would throw a fit for the first hour, and then when I said I would have to leave, he would beg me to stay. So I'd end up staying for 2 hours. So finally I said, look, if you'll do your homework the second I get here, so I only stay for an hour, as long as I live in Los Angeles, I will mentor you. Fair? And he was like, yes. And so what was supposed to be 8 weeks turns into 8 years. Comes out, he was being abused at home. I didn't realize. I become the guardian, the ward of the court that helped him into foster care, like the whole, like that's how embedded into this kid's life I become over 8 years. And I didn't save him from his zip code. And the reason I don't say his name anymore is I don't want people looking him up or whatever. He has not yet thrived, though I remain optimistic and would love to get back into contact with him. So hopefully he will see one of these videos and reach out. I've tried to track him down. And so I become obsessed with this idea of, right now in America, this is true, it's actually true in most of the developed world, your zip code is the #1 predictor of your future success. So back at Quest, I saw 1,000 of my 3,000 employees reminded me of this kid. And I was like, I don't want to fail again. Because what ended up happening is, once he got into foster care, they just moved him farther and farther and farther away, and I was broke at the time, and he was like 2 hours away. So we ended up losing contact. And I'm like, I'm not okay with that. So I opened what I called Quest University, which of course now becomes Impact Theory University, which we give away to anybody that can't afford it. And it's me just saying, think like this, act like this, and it'll make your life better. But realizing that, unfortunately, the realities of the human brain are such that by the time you're a fully baked adult, you can still change. All of us can change. But you can change a lot more when you're 11. And so we have now aimed, 85% of what Impact Theory does is aimed at 11 to 15-year-olds, because I think of this kid every day. And if anybody wants to see what that looks like, I did a video on YouTube called My Master Plan. So if you type in my name plus master plan, you'll see me talking about this kid and all the kids at Quest that I got to know very, very well, that the inner city's just demolished. And why I fight as hard as I fight to create the things that I'm creating. But the short of it is, there's about 5 people that I know and love and can think of that have been, some of them have now escaped, and that's some of the most gratifying things in my life, but some of them haven't. And so many of the other people at Quest didn't. So it's just like holding those names and those people in my mind, staying in contact with them and thinking like, what would I actually need to create to make sure that nobody else has to go through that? So it's the big vision of making sure nobody gets to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset, anchored by these 5 people that I think about on a daily basis.
That's really, really important advice for people to keep in mind, is to anchor it and not just be working for some idea, but work for a person that anchors and represents that idea. I remember I was recently in this little business mastermind group of people in Austin, part of the community that wanted to get together and post-transaction, and I'm talking about my Fit for Service fellowship, which is bringing a group of people together, going through initiatory rituals, building a community where people can be vulnerable and support each other. And they were, one of the guys was like, well, why are you doing this anymore? Like the money's inconsequential compared to relative to everything else. Why do you care? Because all of my questions were about that. How do I make this better? How do I, that's really what I was focused on. They're like, what are you even worried about? And I really thought about it. And it's because when I'm there with somebody and I see them and I see the breakthrough happen and I see something transform and I stay in touch with them, we have an app, so I stay in touch with them. I've run into them in different places. A lot of them moved to Austin. I'll see them and I'll know that I actually did something for that person, for Sarah, not for the world, even the person with the little thumbnail picture and says, wow, your podcast changed my life. Oh, thank you. It comes automatically. I do feel whatever gratitude I can feel for that moment, but it's hard for me to take it in. But when I know that person, and I've been in a sweat lodge with them, and I've been in, breath work with them, and I've shared my own tears and my own experience with them, then it becomes meaningful. And then I can really care in the way that provides that solar energy that I really crave, that fuel to drive me. And I think more intentionality, even when I'm writing because I'm writing another book, and I'm thinking about this is going to be really helpful for everybody who reads it. Well, everybody who reads it is meaningless. I need to come up with no, it's going to be helpful for this person and all the people like them, but really anchor it. So it's very good advice for me to hear, and I'm sure good advice for other people to hear.
Yeah, and then the other part of that is, so desire is a process. So people will sort of get that love is a process, right? You have to actually spend time with that person. You go on dates. There's a reason that those rituals exist, because it is a process of doing certain things that make you end up falling in love, and you develop a neurochemical reaction. The first time I saw Lisa, my now wife of 19 years, the neurochemical reaction was one of sexual attraction, right? And now I have that's like a note in this now symphony of responses that I get, and understanding that took a high degree of intentionality, even just like the sort of blind way that we spend time with those that we love, of sharing experiences and life and all of that's the process. But when it comes to desire, there's like a really specific process that people can do that will anchor it. So when I was deciding, okay, we're going to do this thing called impact theory, and now I know these people that I want to build this for, but that's not enough yet. I have to attach this, I'm building a studio for these people for this reason. And so it was, whenever I hear somebody say, you're born with a mission in life, I always get my back up at that, because 1,000 years ago, had Steve Jobs been born, I think he still would have lived an extraordinary life, but it would have looked nothing like it looked now. He wouldn't have been like, I want to create the iPhone, right? It just didn't exist. So we're all a product of our time. And once you realize that, then it's like, well, then if that's true, that Steve Jobs 1,000 years ago would have fallen in love with something the way that he fell in love with current technology, then what is that process that anchors it to something, and can I take conscious control of that? And it goes like this. You tell yourself, I'm going to build a studio to help people 11 to 15 to make sure that nobody gets to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset. Why? Because of this kid that I failed. Now, I had never said to myself, I failed the kid that I mentored before. In fact, my whole story around him was I showed him that somebody loved him. At a time where he was unfortunately being abused at home, he didn't know that anybody loved him. And so I became that figure in his life. Now, I was too young to really understand it at the time, but now looking back, I completely understand what that would have been like for him. And so I switched it to saying, as much as I loved him, I did end up failing him in that I did not save him from his zip code. And that became this really important thing. And the more that I said that to myself, the more that I told other people I wasn't willing to fail more people, and that I was going to build the studio to make sure that I could help people at scale, the more that I then embodied the passion. So I didn't just say it blankly. I was really expressing the way that I wanted to feel when I thought about that. And the more that so you have this mechanism in your brain that justifies the amplitude of your reaction. So if you react big to something, your brain goes, whoa, I guess this is a big deal. And so you can actually just layer that on.
It's like the universe is listening.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. Absolutely. And you get this neurological feedback. So the more that I do that and put it out in a big way, actually embody it, it like starts to become real. And so the master plan video that I was talking about, I'd been reinforcing it myself. By the time I recorded that, probably for about 18 months, maybe 2 years. So it completely caught me off guard when I explained it out loud for the first time to like other than just my friends that, you know, I'd failed this kid and that I wasn't gonna, and I just completely broke down and cried with no layer of performance. Like I know what it's like to get on stage and like perform and like make sure that people feel your passion. I was fucking caught off guard. It was like really almost awkward how caught off guard I was. And I thought, oh my God, this really works. Like the more I told myself, this is what this is about, this is why I'm doing it, it actually became that. And so you have to anchor on something real. Like that was all there for me and it was all too easy to like really buy into, yeah, I really did fail him. But it was a process. And it's so powerful when you realize that you can aim that process at something.
Yeah, people think that it's just something it's innate, it's there or it's not, and you have it or you don't, but you've taken something, a kernel of something that was real, and then almost like how an oyster will make a pearl. It'll take, like there's a grain of sand of your initial desire, but you're wrapping it in whatever pearlescent layer over and over and over again, so that when you open that oyster anytime, you got a shining, glistening pearl of desire. Yeah, it's super powerful to think about because then we all have these little grains of sand, but what are we going to make a pearl out of?
You need the grain of sand.
Yeah.
But yeah, by the time you're done, it's become this useful thing. It's not always beautiful, but it's become useful.
Sure.